My hairs are wet.
Your hairs look good when they're wet. Uh,
Yay.
Setting up your meeting for YouTube Live. Looks like.
There you got
It's
it.
gonna
Rick's
do
got
it.
it.
It's
Yeah,
gonna
that's a
do
Rick.
I'm
it.
almost there. I'm almost there. I'm almost there.
That's a Rick Thompson miracle.
Yes. Come on, baby.
Can we talk about the MORE Act?
Please, yes. And the fact that the House of Representatives is going to pass it, but the Senate will just sit on it and do nothing like they've done all the rest of the time. Yeah.
Yeah, but
Por
we can
favor.
start. We can start our
We are live.
barrage.
Are we on?
We
Well
are. It says
done, Mr. Thompson.
Yay!
iPhone has entered the waiting room. I will admit iPhone. iPhone is now
I think
admitted.
that's Jim.
That's
That might
probably
be Jim.
It's Jim.
Because he was knocking.
Yeah.
So
If you could turn your phone the other way, Jim, so you could be normal, we would appreciate it.
Jim does not know how to be normal.
Can't we just take
That
them
way.
all and make them normal?
Or you could just turn your head like really sharply this way.
Now we
Sadly,
disappeared
hey, we're
altogether.
broadcasting live. We're happy about that. We had some problems on Facebook. Tried it a couple different ways, couple different times. Didn't work. Rick tried it on YouTube, and it worked. So here we are. We should just start including this anyway. We were talking about it for a while.
somebody's playing the YouTube broadcast while we're actually.
Yeah. Don't play the other broadcast so that can be picked up by the microphone.
I am not. Do not
It was
accuse
Rick,
me.
Rick,
That was
once you're
me.
connected. Oh, okay.
Guilt
He's
is
put-
right here.
See, he's a good
So-
cop. He's policing himself.
I wouldn't
right,
say
so-
that about me.
Most of the people find us, but we got a good show today. I'm looking forward to it. Actually, we're going to cover some ground. And Shelly, for a rare appearance right at the beginning of the show here,
I know.
she's excited about the MORE Act being voted on in the U.S. House of Representatives this month. And that is pretty cool. So we'll get to that. We're also going to discuss the interview from the Democratic Cannabis Caucus with Attorney General Dana Nessel, in which Rick facilitated. Did a great job, and we got some good stuff to work with out of that meeting. We're going to be joined today by former Wayne County candidate for Wayne County prosecutor and Detroit civil rights attorney, Victoria Burton-Harris, who was on the show with us a few weeks ago. And she is actually going to be involved in a discussion with the Democratic Cannabis Caucus and three existing candidates for three progressive existing candidates for county prosecutor. And so, well,
What's so funny about that?
That is pretty funny. Or are you laughing because
It's
Jim.
Jim's sideways phone. Yes.
Jim
Oh,
went
it's still-
away and
Just
came
won't be
back.
normal.
And oh, there he is. There he is.
you just will not be normal? And
Look
He's
at how
so
good
small,
Jim looks
though.
driving. That's
Well,
a
that's
money
why.
maker right there. Look at those driving
why.
hands. Look at
All
that
right.
driving hat.
Okay. That's enough attention on Jim for a minute.
Oh,
Okay.
done.
We got
Hi,
started,
everybody.
we got started a little bit
back to
late.
Jamie.
We're trying to get on track. We got some good stuff going on. We will give Jim a lot of attention toward the end of the show. We'll dedicate the last part of the show to only giving attention to Jim. I promise.
No,
But,
the sad thing is I'm picking up a friend who is getting a colonoscopy today, so I'm sitting in the parking lot waiting to drive them home.
Shoot.
Are you gonna?
Well,
We'd,
are you
we'd like
gonna
to. We'd like to hear
broadcast that
some.
live?
Yeah, we'd like to hear some details about that.
Let's
You know,
talk to him.
obviously,
We'd like to see that.
Take
a
your
little
phone
dive
in
into
with you.
that.
Take your phone with you. Yeah,
HIPAA
yeah.
laws require me
So
not
anyway.
to disclose anything.
All right. Well, saving. I think one of the most interesting stories going on right now, and I'm really happy Rick helped to put this together. Is there is a Indian community in UP looking at doing its own community-based commercial cannabis venture, separate from either of Michigan's schemes, either of Michigan's commercial programs. So as a sovereign nation, they are looking to do their own. There's more to the story, and we'll get into that. And the attorney representing them to make that happen, Whitney Gravelle,
Mhm.
is going to be joining us, and I'm definitely looking forward to that too. And you know, they could, and in fact, in the press, they say that you know, they are looking to make a more, you know, functional and efficient system that we have going on here, and they expect that the lower prices as a result to be attractive to the consumers. And, you know, and that sounds good to me, to have an alternative system to look at that might be working better than what we're going with. I think it's a good idea. I'm just wondering, does anybody else, and, you know, Rick can spin it around as usual, have an issue with another system being in the state? And would you go? I mean, provided it's you're comfortable with it, or it's not during the pandemic type thing, just philosophically. What do you think about having some competition?
Well, I certainly don't mind some competition. Frankly, let's realize that Michigan is already a state of competition. There's the regulated market, and then there's the legacy market, the one that we've been using for decades. So there's already multiple markets set up in the state, and that's not going to change anytime soon. Certainly not within our generation's lifetime. So I would welcome it. I mean, it doesn't bother me at all. I'm not a tax-paying MMFLA licensee or an MRTMA licensee. I'm sure that they would have a different opinion. But from a patient's perspective, Mo is better. Jim Salame, get that shitty assignment today. What do you think about this particular issue? You know, separate and distinct cannabis industry for Native American groups in Michigan? What about it?
I love that idea. I think it's brilliant. I think it's beautiful. I really like that whole idea behind it. I'd like to know more about it, obviously. I'm all for it. I mean, obviously, competition. I mean, everyone should be able to enjoy cannabis. And, you know, I'm definitely open to that.
Certainly seems like the Native American groups have been able to drive people, as far as traffic goes, into their reservations when they provide services for people that they're interested in. For example, casinos and some of the touristy type things that we do when we visit places and shop and such. Debra Young, I mean, this is sort of radical, right? I mean, we got 50
How is
states.
this radical? I mean, I don't see how this is radical. Casinos are already Native owned. I mean, I don't see this as radical at all. I think this is a great idea. You know, the on the reservations, they need businesses. People need to make a living, and people need cannabis. So why is this radical? This is just normal stuff, Rick.
Radical because it's not been done before.
Well,
if you guys
maybe
remember,
not.
in 2014, several Native American tribes started to do their own hemp farming, and the federal government smacked them down and wouldn't let them do it. So this would be unique. Go ahead, Deb.
Well, they fucked with the natives when we were out at the Cannabis Cup in Vegas too, and the feds threatened. And there was a Cannabis Cup with no cannabis. I mean, literally, except for what I was sneaking in my backpack. Otherwise, there was no cannabis at this Cannabis Cup. So yeah, the feds will fuck with them, but if this is something that can happen, I agree with Jim. It's a beautiful thing. I don't see it as being a radical thing. I just think that as people trying to get into a market where they can make some money and where people can get a product that they love, and I don't see a bad part on. I see no downside on this.
This should have been allowed a long time ago. This should have been allowed a long time ago.
Competition doesn't hurt anybody, and anybody who can successfully operate a cannabis business in Michigan, hey, go for it. I think it's a great idea.
This also helps to define sovereignty. We know that Native American groups were given sovereignty when they were, you know, essentially forced off their ancestral lands and put onto these shitty fucking pieces of land that the United States government gave them to live on. And we told them they could operate independently, but yet we seem to step on their necks every time they try to do that. Shelly Smith.
Well, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm all for it. I'm all for it. And really, I'm all for all the markets, because I think it normalizes something and makes it seem like it is what it is. And I'm sure I've used this analogy before, but I want, you know, some people are going to grow their own tomatoes. Some people are going to go get their tomato sauce at the store. Some people are going to go to a certain farmer to get their tomatoes from. Some people are going to can their own tomatoes. Like, I want it to be like, you can do whatever the fuck you want because they're just tomatoes. You know what I mean? I want cannabis to be just out there. And some people can make $1 billion on tomato sauce. Like, who cares? I still want to be able to grow tomatoes in my backyard. Even if you've done it the most and you make the most money doing it, just don't make it hard for me to do it. You know, like, let it be, like, go for it. And I bet what's going to be fun about watching it happen is, of course, they're going to be able to do better than the federal government. Like, because they'll probably put like 95 less fucking hoops to jump through to get things done. Like, let's just make it easier. Let's make it trade or whatever. Like, I can't wait to see what they do.
Yeah, it sounds like it'll be better than the state programs too, or at least more efficient.
Less forms.
More functional, yeah.
Less
Deb,
bullshit.
Deb, you were starting to say something, and I went to Shelly. What were you going to grab at there? You're on mute. You're on mute.
We might have been spared what that actually was.
Yeah, I don't really remember.
Oh,
I don't remember. I went on mute because my dogs are, you know, they're walking around making noises. So
I like the idea of demonstrating a system
Bring
that
them
works
on.
fine without all the additional costs and restrictions and prohibitions and stuff like that. I mean, I understand that starting off in this, you know, new commercial systems that we have here in Michigan, we do put up with a lot of that stuff because we can't really get started and get everybody to get in on it and to get it to happen without conceding some of those things to make people feel comfortable. But to have an opportunity to see it in action and to point to it, you know, as a reason to shed some of these additional costs and burdens might be a really good thing.
You know, we've got 50 different states. We talked about 50 different individual crucibles of democracy, different programs that can flourish, and then we can take the successful portions from each one of these programs and make a better program for ourselves with it. Well, let's give the Native Americans an opportunity to do it too. Maybe when they streamline the process and they avoid the legislature and all of the politics that go into there, maybe they come up with the best possible way to do this. And
also cheaper. Look what they do with cigarettes. They sell cigarettes for like $1.50 a pack or something on the Native American. They have some kind of a thing going. Don't they still do that?
Probably because if you get tobacco and you make a cigarette, it's cheap. But if like 9 levels of people have to make money and change hands and get
all the taxes
their
they put on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of.
It's interesting.
5:00 p.m. by the way, Eastern time for those folks that are watching at home. 5 p.m. is when we'll have Whitney Gravelle on. She's the attorney representing the Bay Mills Casino, or I'm sorry, the Bay Mills Indian Group, and she also just recently won a big case allowing the Bay Mills Group to participate in discussions about Line 5. They'd been frozen out of those conversations before, even though their territorial lands are affected by this whole Line 5 proposal. The special tunnel they want to drill underneath the Mackinac Bridge. Finally, the government said, you know what? Yeah, you're right. You do deserve to have a voice in the conversation, which is, you know, way overdue.
Yeah, it's happening right underneath your feet here. So come on into the conversation. What a bunch of bullshit, you know?
This just shows exactly to what degree industry has their hooks into a lawmaker.
In everything, but in everything.
They've
got their hooks into everything.
Yep. I will not be quiet. It's my library. It's the highbrary.
Yeah. Oh.
Is that from China too? Or is that from China too?
I don't think it's from China.
Well, I mean, the ones you had on order. Remember, you had them on order from China. They were special delivery.
Came from Amazon, so I'm not really sure. It may have.
You know, it's not from China because it's there. If it was from China, it would get there 2 months from now. He ordered it last month.
I did sort of have to wait for a while to
get it. That's what happened. That's what happened. Yeah. So that's why I'm asking.
So Victoria Burton-Harris is going to join us in a few minutes, just after 4:20.
You telling us to stop talking about Ginas?
No, well, I mean, I think she can handle it.
I think she's familiar with the president's phraseology.
Don't think it's necessary though, but you know, she can deal. And that'll be pretty cool. But a couple minutes here, you know,
get it all out.
So Shelly, instead of talking about vagina being the taking over for
no one said
the relative Reyes over there.
We only said Gina. We never said va.
Vagina has Ray energy.
The va was inferred.
We never infer anything.
Oh my goodness.
You say va, I scream Jana.
And out of nowhere.
Where is Ray?
Why don't you take a minute, and we'll get to it too later on in the thing, but in the show. But the MORE Act is being voted on this month.
You can change the
House of Representatives. Well, it's instead of talking about That much.
Yeah, let's talk about this because
Sorry about
Let's
that.
talk about this. Let's get serious now. Come on.
No, I asked 5 different people today that I thought surely they would know what the MORE Act is. And they're very in the industry and they did not know. And they didn't know who you were supposed to call, to encourage them to vote. So it's worth talking about because we swim around in it and we've been talking about it forever. So of course we know, but I asked 5 people today and none of them knew. People that I thought surely they would know because it affects their life, So if people right now are caring about Black Lives Matter and they're caring about police reform, then they should really care about the MORE Act because it's we were looking for drugs. We thought he was a drug dealer. We started shooting. They had drug paraphernalia. They had cash. It's like, yeah, it's because you turned them into criminals. Like
the MORE Act would solve a lot of issues, and I agree with that. And it is going to be up for vote in the House where it does have some support, and we are coming up on 420 within seconds, so people celebrate that themselves. But the issue will be. Sorry, go ahead, Rick.
The viewers that don't know, the MORE Act proposes a descheduling of cannabis on a federal level. Please go ahead, Jamie. I just wanted to.
Yeah, and it would provide for states to be able to handle this issue as they see fit without intervention, and it would just solve a lot of problems and disassociate the crimes, with cannabis on the scheduling and all that kind of stuff. And it will find a challenge and probably not get too far when it gets to the Senate, even if it's successful in the House. Doesn't mean that we don't support it and
why are you saying that?
Encourage it.
Why are you saying that?
Because every piece of legislation has met resistance in the Senate.
It would require Mitch McConnell bringing it up for a vote and having it discussed and then voted on. And if that were to happen, that would be awesome. But to expect that is probably not likely.
So he doesn't have to? If it passes the House, he doesn't have to bring it up for
He's got a
vote?
stack of several hundred bills that he has not done that with, that has been passed bipartisanly out of the House. It would help out a lot of things. He has done a lot of getting federal judges appointed to seats.
So he can just let it sit. He can just let it just rot and sit and do nothing to it.
Well, remember that bill will be assigned to a Senate committee, and then there's a chairman of that Senate committee. Now, that chairman can choose to bring that bill up for debate and for a vote, or that chairman can choose to sit on it. If the chairman decides to bring it up for debate and a vote, and if it passes out of committee, then McConnell has the final say about whether or not it's voted on by the full Senate. But even in committee, McConnell can tell that committee chairman, you don't bring this up. I don't want to see this in the newspaper at all, period.
Yep.
That's what Senate Majority Leader has. That's the power they have.
So the person to bombard with citizen action is that committee leader and Mitch McConnell.
And Mitch McConnell.
I mean, the Democrats in the Senate have traditionally supported cannabis law reform, but they've just been in the minority, so they can't get anything even brought up for debate or for a vote.
Is there a committee? There's not a committee yet, right?
Once the MORE Act is passed by the House, the Senate must automatically assign it to committee when it's reported to the Senate. So we'll know after it's passed, but that doesn't mean that we'll get any action on it.
Got it.
The Safe Banking Act has been sitting around for a long time.
Yeah, there's a bunch of stuff that's been sitting around like that.
I talked to some of our people in Washington, D.C., and they say, all the Senate's done is just approve judges. They haven't made any significant legislative moves. There have been some things that have been clearly bipartisan that have gone to the president's desk, but there's a lot of things that came out of the House that just went to the Senate to die.
Surprise, surprise.
That's partisan politics, especially in an election year. If you don't want people talking about cannabis because your record on cannabis is not good, this is a way to sit on that stuff until after the election. So.
Wow.
Huh. That's so frustrating.
Yeah, that brought me down too.
Well, the thing is why, but it's still worth like going, oh, the Senate won't do anything. That we can do that, but we could also call every single person we know in every state and get them to at least call their senator.
It's notable to have it make that kind of progress, to like get passed through the House of Representatives. That's a really cool thing. That's that's as far as we've got.
Yeah.
We
and
get
I'm
we start giving money to the opponent to McConnell, which is McGrath. We just give her some money
Okay.
and start throwing her name out there.
That's Mitch McConnell's opponent in the upcoming election, Ms. McGrath, who's I believe, a veteran of the military and who's running to unseat him from his from his Senate seat in Kentucky, which would be the first real time that he's ever faced a serious challenge in his entire tenure in the Senate.
How long has he been in office, Rick? Do you know? A long time, right?
14 plus years, I think,
Yeah.
maybe longer than that.
14th
It'd
century.
be awesome to rattle that cage.
And here's a
He looks like
situation where you've got Mitch McConnell, and oftentimes Republicans will say McConnell's really pro-hemp. McConnell's really pro-hemp, which, if I'm a hemp farmer, maybe that's impressive to me. But the fact is, I'm a cannabis law reform advocate. So if you're not going to go all the way on my issue, then you might as well be a no vote, because that's the thing. There's just nobody out there that says McConnell's pro-cannabis. McConnell might be pro-hemp, but only in a restrictive, federally, constrained way that we don't believe would be business. Yeah.
Jamie would be digging that because he likes to smoke hemp. I mean, that's his thing.
He's a big hemp flower guy, that Jamie
He
Lowell.
would love to switch over to hemp flower only.
Well, don't you guys think that that there's a chance they could pass it just for the play of getting it out of the voter booths, where you're gonna have a bigger voter turnout if people have to go and vote for these different, adult use laws that are up for vote in November. But if you pass it in September, you don't have to worry about that turnout now at the election box.
Well, I guess and Trump did say that he's concerned about Republicans facing, being on the same ballot with pro-cannabis measures, thinking that that's bad for them. So maybe that would be a strategy. It's hard to imagine that happening.
I don't know. A couple of the most rampant Republicans I know are big cannabis activists. So I think it's a bipartisan issue, cannabis is.
Oh, I haven't seen any evidence of that, but we are now joined by Victoria Burton-Harris. Thank you for joining Jazz Cabbage Cafe today.
Hi, everybody. Good to be back. How's it going?
Very good. Very good.
Good.
Oh, there she
is. It's really good to have you back. We really appreciate our last discussion. Unfortunately, we're not celebrating your victory in the primary, but everything that you had to say, what you wanted to do, is still very important, and you still talking about that and having a voice and continuing this effort is good. And I hope that we talk a little bit about that today.
Absolutely.
Plans are. And then another thing is we are getting ready to have a conversation with three progressive candidates for county prosecutor in Ingham County, Washtenaw County, and Oakland County. Carol Seaman, Ellie Savitt, and Karen McDonald. And we'll have a discussion with them about what their intentions are, and a lot of the stuff that you talked about when you were campaigning are things that I would like to hear their thoughts on too. And I know you joining us on the panel and having this discussion will certainly include that.
For sure. Yeah.
Perspective, and we're looking forward to that. So tell us what's going on now post campaigning.
Well, I am enjoying spending the rest of the summer with my family, not knocking doors and making calls. It was a great, enjoyable experience, but it certainly feels good to take a break from that. I am back to work. As you know, I am a criminal defense attorney and a family law attorney. And this issue just came up in one of my family law cases with a father who smokes marijuana during his parenting time. And the family law bench is in a different place than the criminal law bench of judges on this issue.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It's a mess.
Yeah, it is. It certainly is a mess.
Is this argument that it's like it affects the safety of the child to be around it?
There are still judges and attorneys who lean on that argument, and there are some cases from the Court of Appeals that support that. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
What a mess.
So in addition to continuing my work as an attorney, I am still a member of the National Lawyers Guild as well as the National Conference of Black Lawyers. And we've been very busy this summer working on police coalition accountability and transparency work. We've now, there's a group of us who are now adding to that prosecutor accountability and transparency. So a lot of the promises that were made on the campaign trail, we want to ensure that, quite frankly, prosecutors who are elected are living up to that, right? Like, you can't just say something to get elected. You have to make sure that if this is what the people want, that that's the kind of leadership that you're bringing. And one of those issues is making sure that we don't have marijuana cases coming through the criminal system. Despite what we've been told during the campaign, there have been a number of cases in the last 5 years that have come through regarding simple marijuana possession. We have had a number of cases where the prior felony was marijuana related, and it was 20 years ago, and it's caused a sentencing enhancement for someone who just got a new charge now, totally unrelated to what they did 20 years ago.
Oh my God.
And when you talk about, disparities, in the disparities in the criminal justice system, you can't ignore color, and you can't ignore the kind of crimes that are attached to those, and they're mostly drug crimes. And so when you talk about excessive sentences due to sentencing enhancements, you're looking at a lot of times Black folks getting caught up on old marijuana felony charges from years ago.
Matthew Abel, an attorney who's also with the National Cannabis Lawyers Guild, reported recently that legal observers were roughed up by the Detroit Police Department during some protests in the city. And I know that you operate in Wayne County primarily. Can you opine about that? I mean, it seems like that's absolutely not what's supposed to happen to those legal observers.
So I'm a part of a coalition, like I said, as a National Lawyers Guild member and a National Conference of Black Lawyers member, where we are focused on this very issue of protecting our protesters. The National Lawyers Guild actually has a lawsuit. There are several attorneys within the guild we just filed a lawsuit earlier this week in federal court about that very issue. Police officers not just roughing up prosecutors, but now they're doing it to media folks. They're doing it to legal observers who are members of the National Lawyers Guild, the folks who go out in the green hats, who are, trained to go out and observe the actions of police and protesters. And they're truth tellers when it's time for us to, as attorneys, to know what the heck happened out there. And it's insane, this narrative of outside agitators, non-Detroiters coming in. One, it's a false narrative. It's just not true. A lot of folks who move into the city oftentimes don't change their addresses from where they've come from. And it also, calls into question the flip side of that argument. If you're so concerned about protesters not being from the city, why aren't you concerned about the police who police the city not being from the city? It's an asinine argument, and it's almost like this Trump fear, tactic that, these people are coming to hurt us in our own city and they're not from here. No, these are folks who you have just ignored and dismissed for so long. And you now can't, because they will not be silenced. They will not be ignored. They will not stop until their voices are heard, and they deserve that. And it's only going to get worse. Last week, Detroit Police Chief James Craig took to the media to say that, he doesn't appreciate this movement and he wants these protesters to go away. And that is just the absolute wrong thing to say in the Blackest city in America when you're the police chief during the summer of 2020. It's just,
and assuming he's not offering
tone deaf.
And it sounds so like, I don't like this, I want it to go away. It's like, really?
Well, exactly, but he's doing it while not offering an alternative coherent plan to satisfy everybody's concerns here. Just wants
Yeah,
to
you don't get to say you want
Yeah.
this to go away when your officers are driving through crowds of protesters with trucks. You don't get to
Oh
say you
my
want this
God.
to go away when your officers are executing at, a young 19-year-old who has been subdued. Despite the
Yeah.
fact, look, was it wrong that Hakeem Littleton took a shot at the police? Absolutely. Was it something that he should have been killed for when it could have been avoided? No, no.
No.
The videos have now come out that Hakeem Littleton had been subdued. He was, at the time that he was executed, not posing any harm to the police. And that was simply a move for them to show who's in charge here. You take a shot at us, we take your life. And
The
that's
police
inexcusable. You can make an arrest without killing someone. You can make an arrest without brutalizing someone.
Police Chief Craig also criticized people from outside the city coming into Detroit to protest. But the fact is, federal courthouses, federal buildings are only located in the city of Detroit, not in people's home city.
Yeah,
If we wish to protest those halls of power, those halls of power reside in the largest city in the state. So we have no
Plus,
choice but to go there. To
most
air
of
our
us who live in the surrounding suburbs and stuff, because I was born in the city and lived many years in the city and back and forth. Sometimes I live in the city for 5 or 6 years. Now I'm in Ferndale. We still consider ourselves Detroiters, and when we want to get together and make a loud voice, we head to where we were born. We were born in Detroit. I'm a Detroiter. So for Chief Craig to say that I'm not a Detroiter is fucking bullshit.
I agree. Our mayor is not a Detroiter.
That's what
There are
I'm
lots
saying.
of people who are
Yeah.
not Detroiters.
Yeah.
That's not to mean that it's a bad thing, okay?
Right.
I am not a native Detroiter. I hail from Flint, Michigan. But the problem is when we get so bogged down in that narrative of who's from where.
Right. It's us against them. That's what the bottom line is. Us against them.
Yeah.
And we shouldn't be disqualifying people's opinion and their voices based on where they currently reside. That just
No.
America.
The fact of the matter is that people who wear these blue uniforms are, becoming increasingly more hostile towards civilians. And it historically has always been the case when people of color are on the other end. And now it's become a problem that will no longer be ignored. And I think that it's a beautiful thing. I think that's what, we say our country was founded on, right? And so if you know your history, you know that this isn't the first time that we've had movements like this. And we, 30, 40 years from now, we'll be praising folks from Detroit Will Breathe. Just like we are now praising, look at how we celebrated John Lewis. Look at how we have, for all of our lifetime, celebrated King. And these are people who were told to get off the street and they didn't get off the street. So it just blows my mind when the people that lead us or that are supposed to be leading us don't lead us with any kind of appreciation for our history, and that this is nothing new.
The fact that it's nothing new is kind of a shame on the American history too, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
We're reliving the same bad racial scenario that we've had in like a Groundhog Day type of a rerun over and over and over.
Well, some lip service and then no real, substantive change.
Yeah.
Yep. When
George
W. Bush was up for his second election, that's when Rodney King was killed, and there were the riots in Los Angeles, and he completely botched his handling of that. He totally alienated a lot of Americans, and many people feel that incident helped cost him a second term in office and put Bill Clinton in office because Clinton was more sympathetic to what happened. He was more sympathetic to the people that were saying not enough, or that this is enough. Too much.
When you talk about sympathy, I automatically go to empathy, which to me is just as important, if not more important. We have to have leaders that understand and have a healthy appreciation for pain and for the people who live closest to that pain, who can tell us the stories of that pain, because that's when, as a leader, you can make sure you take care of the least of us, the people who are most marginalized, who very rarely and are adequately represented and protected. And to me, that's the kind of leader that we are calling out for right now in this day and age on every level, local, state, and certainly on the national level.
When Jamie, did you want to jump in? I know you've been leaning forward there.
Kind of wanted to talk about the prosecutor scenario and abilities. And as many of these people who we refer to here and talk about get into the system and get excessively charged with things and severe sentences for relatively minor, behavior. Is it possible for the county prosecutor to review cases that have been closed where the convictions have already happened and even people have been in jail already or have been even served their times and review those and determine that there was excessive sentencing and harsh treatment in those cases?
It is possible. The resources simply are not there many of the time. So there has to be a conscientious decision to pull resources from something else. I think the last time I was on, we spoke about units such as the asset forfeiture unit, the vehicle forfeiture unit, and how if we examine the impact that those units are having overall. And we can decide if it's better to pull resources from units like that and put it into being able to go back and examine not just cases where there are, new claims of innocence or of new evidence, but we can look at cases where, like say this list of untruthful officers that was just released that we know was incomplete. As it grows, will there be an effort to reallocate resources to examine those old cases tied to those officers? Will there ever be an effort to examine cases where there's been prosecutorial misconduct when there is not new evidence, that you can fall back on to submit to the conviction integrity unit? So there's certainly a lot that can be done, but you have to be very strategic in how you do it because the resources are not just readily available. You have to create them. You have to certainly know folks that you can call on a national level that you can say, hey, I need money and I need hands to be able to do this very important work for this simple objective of looking in old cases, because I know that it's not just, innocent people are there, that can say that they have new evidence. There are people who have no new evidence, but they should have never been there. And we can see that because a lot of these cases are now coming through the Court of Appeals through their own attorneys. But the fact of the matter is there are just not, enough folks who will have the wherewithal and the resources to hire private defense counsel on an appellate level to do that.
When people oftentimes speak about defunding the police, what they really mean is redefining how we fund police. And some of those redirected funds from normal day-to-day operations could go towards the type of activities you're talking about to redress some of the grievances created over the decades of really kind of some lack of leadership and a lack of oversight of our law enforcement community.
One thing, I agree with you. For me, when I say defund the police, I think more of divesting from law enforcement and investing in communities and in resources for our communities and for people who live in them. So that means more social services, having on a government level more social workers in our schools, less police officers in our schools. Very basic, simple principles like that, right? Like, why aren't we swapping out literally a cop body for a social worker body? And we can certainly achieve more in terms of problem solving with our youth as opposed to shoving them through the school to prison pipeline. But when you talk about redressing wrongs, you certainly can't skip over redressing the wrongs of the failed war on drugs. The thing that is uniting all of us here is our passion for an advancement in the area of marijuana and the law. And, you can't skip over the fact that so many folks are being relegated to the bottom of society because of marijuana convictions for, a drug that is now legal. Okay. And so I know that there is some movement with the expungement package of bills in Lansing, but it's moving really slow. And we know historically bills are not passed as they're drafted. They get sliced and diced and watered down. And I am loving the work that I'm seeing of San Francisco DA Chesa Boudin, and a couple of other true progressive prosecutors who are saying, you know what, the war on drugs was a failure. It was wrong. There are people walking around with drug convictions today that shouldn't have them. And we're going to start exploring automatic marijuana expungements. That's certainly something that we could benefit from here in Michigan, in every county, not just Wayne County, but across the board in every county.
When you say this California prosecutor is saying, let's explore expungement, where is that on the timeline? What is exploring? Like, is it happening somewhere? Is it like?
Yes, so there is a company called Code for America out in California that they are teaming up with different jurisdictions to use the voter roll and use driver's license databases to expunge automatically convictions involving marijuana.
And so is it like a committee partnering with the criminal justice system or record system, or how would that?
Yeah, so Chesa Boudin is working with representatives from the company, and then there is a committee who sits on that committee out there. I'm not sure, but I believe that I know that it's community organizations and some other stakeholders, and they have collectively gotten together, and they are using those government resources to identify the people who need the records expunged, and then working with the tech company to actually go in and expunge them.
Is that expunging a statewide record or just a local record? Because I'm not sure if they have statewide authorization for automatic expungement in Cali, do they?
They do not. This is on a local level. Yeah, they're
Oh,
working with local jurisdictions. Mm-hmm.
Still a valuable tool that we could possibly emulate here in Michigan, especially considering Wayne County and the vast number of people that have been negatively affected by the war on drugs who reside in or who were charged in Wayne County.
And we'll definitely bring that up with the candidates on Thursday night when you join us. I know that you have so much time today, and we're kind of getting toward the end of this segment and the amount of time that you have. But that type of thing, of course, I would believe would be part of that conversation, and it should be really good. So look forward to that, which is Thursday night on our Democratic Cannabis Caucus Facebook page, and with Mike McCurdy and Victoria Burton-Harris joining us. And we're going to have a discussion with the candidates from Ingham County, Washtenaw County, and Oakland County. So it should be really cool, and I'm looking forward to it. Is there anything that you'd like to leave us with or direct anybody to?
Well, I would certainly encourage everyone to stay engaged. I know we're past the primary season. We're now in the general election season. And, I imagine I know who you all are supporting, but that's not really my concern. I just want people to make sure that they get out and vote. I'm hearing a lot of people who are not excited about the candidates on their ballot for November say that, the hell with it. I'm not going to bother. Yeah. I'm hearing a lot of folks say that they're tired of the Democratic Party ignoring them, and, specific populations and the concerns that those populations have. And so they want to sit it out to teach them a lesson. I'm hearing another group of folks say that they're just going to vote third party. And look, I get it all, but, we've had over 200,000 people in this country die from a virus that could have been avoided if we would have had good leadership in place on a national level. So I want to leave with you all, this urgency to not just go out and vote yourselves, but to make sure that you are impressing upon any and everyone that you hear that from, that, I hear what you're saying. There will be time after this election to work on all of that, but this is not the time to sit at home and not vote to teach someone a lesson or because you are disappointed in who's on the ballot.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Great message.
Yes.
Great.
Right on.
Yes.
Right on.
This
Thank
is
you very
not
much.
the time
No, it's critical.
to prove your point. Yeah.
Right, exactly. It's a critical
We
time,
can do
and
all
things
of
have
that
to
the day after
happen.
the election.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
when
There's
you
one
talk
thing's
about-
got to take place for us to move forward. We all know that.
All of this legislation that we care about and we want, we have to have good courts to get it. And if we have Donald Trump in office for another 4 years, we're going to see a shift in our Court of Appeals, as well as most importantly, our Supreme Court.
And of course, all the down ticket items too. Every single race is important. A lot of politics that happens locally, and oftentimes people pay attention to the top of the ticket, and they forget to vote for the non-judicial section, for the judges that we have out there, and for some of the regions, for some of the colleges. People, make sure you do your whole ballot, and if possible, fill it out ahead of time and take it to your clerk. Don't mail it. Just take it down.
Yes. And I want to give a quick shout out to a judicial candidate, Shakira Hawkins, a fellow criminal defense attorney who's running for Wayne County Judge, Third Circuit. Please look out for her. She made it past the primary because she's that awesome.
What's her name?
Elected Shakira Hawkins. She is the only attorney or candidate on the ballot that has a criminal justice reform-minded platform, and she is pro-marijuana. And she has been on the right side of these issues.
Yeah, and isn't she trying to replace someone who's there for strange reasons? I could be thinking of a different race.
There are 2 seats.
Okay.
And there are 4 candidates who will move on to the general vying for those 2 seats. So there's in this race no one that's being replaced. Now she's some interesting folks, but no, she's not replacing anyone.
Victoria, you're from Flint. Where did you go to school here in Flint?
Southwestern Academy.
Central High School right here. Yes.
Oh, nice.
Very good stuff. Nice.
Hey, thanks again. We really appreciate it. And we really, like last time and this time was equally as good, and it's much appreciated. And we hope to have you back on again too in the near future.
Nice to meet you.
Here. You as Thanks well. Look forward to seeing you on Thursday. Take care.
Yeah. All right. Great. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
What a great segment that was.
I like her.
Man, I really wish you would have won her race, man. That would have been
Every
so
single
cool.
one of us has a smile on her face. All 4 of us. I'm looking at her.
She'll run again, you know.
That's great. You know,
Yeah.
And oftentimes it takes a couple of times before someone gets in office. So
Sure. I think Jeff Irwin said he like 3 times before he won the first time.
Sure. No, I forgot to mention, Ricky brought up Cannabis Council.
Could be wrong.
Her husband's also a lawyer and has worked with the Cannabis Council.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you haven't looked into that issue I mentioned about the Detroit police roughing up some of these legal observers, you really should. I think Matt Abel's got some literature about that on Safer Michigan, and there may be a news article about it. But really, you're not supposed to touch those people. They are there literally supposed to be like a signpost, observing, watching, and documenting. Nobody's supposed to mess with those guys. So when the cops grab them and knock them to the ground and bruise them, and that's beyond the pale. That's absolutely unacceptable. So
is there a line somewhere? I mean, you don't seem to.
Yeah. What's the line?
You know what? There really shouldn't be. They are there by consent agreement between law enforcement and other things too. By the way, Jim Salame says no polyps.
Yeah.
So I guess that's good.
That's good. Congratulations.
Unless there's a photo, I don't believe it.
That's right.
Yeah.
No video.
That's the easy part. That's the easy part. Leading up to the day where it happens is the stuff.
Boy, that was quick, man.
Right, you have to, don't you have to drink some fluid?
Drink sand and a little bit of water.
Oh my God.
All day long.
Gallons of it.
And it's just horrid, yeah.
Yeah, wow. What a colonoscopy conversation we're having here. Ooh, wow.
Hey, this is an old folks channel.
I've never had one. I've never had one yet.
I've had one.
Yeah, I've had them. I've had them. They're
you don't know. You're
not
asleep.
painful.
Yeah.
But
I didn't need them. I've just gone to have a few done.
I was not.
Pretty horrible. Jamie has one once a month,
Jamie just does them whether he needs them or not for kicks. He knows a couple people around town will just
recreational
work him in.
I know where to get some good colonoscopies.
He's just like, hey man, I know it's late notice, but can you work me in? Let me know if you get a cancellation. You can just work me in.
I do 3 colonoscopies. The 4th is free, right?
The problem with being on standby is that you have to still prepare for it. So
what if you had a colonoscopy prep fetish?
You'd weigh like.
And what do you mean? What do you mean? What if?
Seriously.
I mean, remember when your colonoscopy prep fetish started? way back in the day.
Yeah.
I shudder to think what those websites look like. Oh,
Now we're all gonna Google that shit when the
Oh, they're
show's
out
over.
there.
Start something without even meaning to.
Here, I thought we'd spend a couple of these minutes talking about the interview that the caucus had with Dana Nessel. So
Yeah, well, actually, we got a little bit of time after we finish with the Bay Mills.
you can do that too. That works too.
She should be coming on here momentarily. And let's set that up too. I know we'll talk to, go ahead, Jamie, you were going to say.
No, there's a lot there to talk about, so I appreciate doing it after, so we can spend a couple more minutes on it, for sure.
And when we talk about the Bay Mills group, understand that, and she'll explain more about this too, Whitney will, but the Bay Mills group tried for a whole solid year to get the state of Michigan to enter into an agreement with the tribal group, and the agreement is called a compact. And the compact is an agreement, an operating agreement, so to speak, between two different governments, right? There are some very famous compacts that existed between Britain and France and the United States and some other nations. It's that's how things are done when you're talking about two sovereign nations communicating together. And the state of Michigan said, nah, not interested. I don't think so. So what they're doing now is born out of frustration because they tried to play the game the way that the system says it wants the game to be played, and they said no, not having it. So this is where sovereignty really gets to flex its muscles a little bit. Last night on our Monday evening podcast, Medical Mondays, they discussed a Minnesota tribal group that's trying to do the same thing here as well. So we may see several different groups be challenged all the way to the United States Supreme Court over the right to do this, and they would probably aggregate resources and argue it as a group because they'd have similar complaints. I mean, you hate to think that's the end result of how these disputes get resolved, Jamie.
Yeah. It's really a lot of interesting things to talk about surrounding this whole effort. I'm looking forward.
What's the name of this
conversation.
Michigan tribal thing? What's the name of that act or whatever that's happening right now?
Well, the group is called the Bay Mills Indian Community, I believe is what they're called.
The one in Michigan?
Yes, that's in the Sault Ste. Marie area.
And I know you had some really good questions for it, and I'm not sure if it includes, but like how the land works. If they own land, is that by extension then something they can utilize for their projects? Although I know that this project is at their Upper Peninsula location.
Right.
So I believe if it grows, can they do something like what the casinos do? Get land in other places and expand.
I believe what we're really looking at here is lands that were granted to them across the state of Michigan historically. I don't think it's just lands that they've acquired through purchasing. So on historically designated tribal lands, I believe they have the ability to do, whatever they want. That's what sovereignty means.
And they have casinos in a few different places. And we talked to Medical Mondays last night, and of course we're not joined by either of the Medical Monday guys, but it would be kind of cool for cannabis to be permitted along with everything else, the drinks and cigars and cigarettes and joints and bongs or dabs, whatever you want to do, and the casino.
It seems odd that in 2020, literally more than 100 years after sovereignty was granted, we'd still be arguing what sovereignty actually means. But this is what happens when a government resists change, like they do resisting the drug war being dropped. So they fight against change as hard as they can. And
can I ask kind of an asshole question? I say sovereignty. Is it sovereignty or sovereignty?
I
think
it's
you are correct, and Rick has been wrong. And
because I'm
silently
listening.
chuckled inside every time I've heard him say it, just because
I'm listening to this word, and I'm going like, is this sovereignty or is this sovereignty? And I was thinking of like serenity, and I was trying to figure out what you were saying, but I think it's sovereignty. And I'm sorry.
I believe it is too.
Okay.
I think it's 3 against 1.
I'm using an English pronunciation.
I understood what he meant, so I let it go and appreciated it my own way, my own fun way. Chose not to challenge him and publicly announce it.
I know. I feel like
I'm at the Library of Congress, and you want to argue with me about definitions? I'm at the library.
I'm sorry. I apologize to the world that if you're saying something wrong, it's all I can think about. I couldn't get past it. I had to let it out.
I love it. I do that too.
I'm
judge
sorry.
people, but do it silently.
Oh my God. Okay, I'm sorry.
But sometimes you can't help it, especially when it's Rick. You must correct.
Well, no, but the thing is Rick, that's been my problem in the past. When someone's really, really confident, I'll give you
Uh-huh.
two quick examples, and I was not the call out bitch the way I'm being right now, but this really good speaker that I know that gets paid a lot to be a speaker was trying to say reverberating, like saying like you could feel the energy reverberating, but they were saying reverberating. And I was losing my fucking mind. I'm going like, oh my God, that's not a word. That's not a word.
Reverberating sounds like it might be a little bit more fun though.
It's a word, but not in, the dictionary.
And then they said, conversate. They kept saying,
that's a bad one.
I was like, do you mean converse or have a conversation? Because conversate isn't anything.
That means nothing. Yeah.
It drove me fucking crazy. I was like, I have to leave here. I've got to go.
Oh, you didn't say you didn't jump
arm.
Up? It's fun to spank Rick, but I mean, you got to judge the audience before you.
No, he's just so confident. He's so confident of a speaker, and that's the way it always gets me. Like if a person is a really confident speaker and they're just saying it, I'm like, surely they're right because they're so
confident. With such confidence, it must feel really good about it.
Yeah, maybe he knows a word that I don't know, and then I'm like, no, I think that is the word.
Well, I like the way you asked. You didn't just say Rick. That was the totally wrong word. You said, hey, does anybody know what the right word is? Is it this or that?
Yeah,
that was good.
I'm always open to.
It was kind of underhanded, actually. If you think about it.
No, it was legit because I've been wrong before. We were trying to describe weed one day, this group of us. And I said, I think it's contemplative. Like this strain is contemplative. And this guy goes, oh, you mean like it makes you think? And I'm like, yeah, it makes me think about all these ideas and da-da-da. And he goes, oh, I think that's contemplative. I'm like, it's for sure not contemplative. It's contemplative. And we all got in this argument, but it's contemplative, not contemplative. So there. We looked it up. Yes.
Well, we've been joined by Whitney now. We're having a semantics conversation.
It's awesome.
It surrounds the word sovereignty. So
sovereignty.
Yes. The majority have ruled, and sovereignty is how you pronounce it. Okay. So Whitney, thank you for joining us here on Jazz Cabbage. We're just having a ball, talking about words and things. We appreciate you joining us today. And
thank you.
You want to introduce yourself and what your role is with Bay Mills and why you've been in the news lately?
Of course. Ani Bojo, Giweden Nagabokwe Indijnakas, Ganushnakani Ndonchaba. My name is Whitney Gravelle. I am a tribal citizen and in-house counsel for Bay Mills Indian community. So I serve as their attorney on almost every legal matter you can possibly think of, and the cannabis industry happens to be one of those as well.
Fantastic. Now, Bay Mills is proposing to do something a little bit different than we've seen before, and that would be to create a cannabis industry exclusively on tribal lands. They can do that because of sovereignty. Okay? So explain to people what that is and why that allows you the opportunity to do this.
Yeah, so tribal sovereignty is an inherent power that comes from your authority in order to make your own laws and be governed by them. For tribes, that inherent authority actually comes from time immemorial. So when you look at Supreme Court cases, essentially it boils down to that since the beginning of time, tribes have governed and ruled themselves and engaged in what we call as sovereignty, so making their own laws and being governed by them. That's also been supported actually in the US Constitution as well. There's a provision in there under Article 1 that says Congress shall have the power to regulate commerce with foreign nations, including Indian tribes. So when Congress in the United States were actually being formed, they also saw tribal nations as sovereigns. So they held the same political status as any other country or any other state because they would engage in treaty negotiations with them. So really, when you look at sovereignty, it's that inherent authority.
So you tried to work with the state of Michigan for about a year in order to enter a compact, which would be an agreement between the two independent groups to have a mutually agreed upon system of working. The state didn't want to have anything to do with it. Can you explain a little bit about that negotiation period and how frustrating that must have been to try so hard to get attention and not get any?
Yeah, to provide a little bit of background too. So Bay Mills Indian community actually has a general tribal council. So when you look at different systems of government, you know, the US government has its executive branch, legislative and judicial, and the president serves as the head of the executive branch. In Bay Mills, our government, rather than a 3-branch system, is more of a linear path. So we do have an executive council. Those are 5 elected members that serve and govern the tribe. But above them, we actually have a general tribal council. Our general tribal council is made up of all of the voting members of our tribe. So anyone that is 18 years or older actually serves on our general tribal council. And it's almost democracy at its finest, because our general tribal council can get together and as one body vote to do something for the tribe. So they can vote, you know, to support something the executive council is doing. They can vote to abolish something that the executive council is doing. But that entire body comes together and makes decisions on behalf of the welfare for the tribe. So when Michigan legalized recreational marijuana, our general tribal council got together in January 2019 and legalized marijuana on the reservation. So we were the first tribe that actually did that, and they were supportive of it. When you look at reservation boundaries, it's not, a line doesn't exist. There isn't a force field, you know, that you pass through and all of a sudden you're on reservation. And they thought, our general tribal council did, that there would be these huge disparities in the criminalization of marijuana if you were on one side of the line and it was legal in the state of Michigan, and you were on the other side and it was illegal for our tribal members. And they didn't want anyone to continue to be unfairly prosecuted for something that was legal everywhere else in the state. So when they legalized marijuana on reservation, our general tribal council gave us the express blessing to enter into the cannabis industry. And that moment is when we began reaching out to the state of Michigan to sign a compact with us for the regulation of marijuana. The reason we chose to reach out to the state on the compact is it was a process that states out west had already done. So, you know, Indian country at large was very familiar with it. We do compacts and other negotiated agreements with the state on gaming, tobacco, taxes. So when you're looking at the government to government relationship between the tribes and the state, it seemed like the natural course. Unfortunately, although we reached out to the state of Michigan shortly after we legalized marijuana on reservation in January 2019, it didn't go anywhere. We were told they couldn't do it. When we asked why they couldn't enter into a compact agreement, we received varying answers, and it seemed that unfortunately the answer was just no, and that they were going to look for a reason to say no without really having a reason to stop them. So after about 1.5 years now of trying to engage them in compact negotiations and meeting these different frustrations, we actually lost out on several investors who were going to enter into this industry with us and help us build this up. Because the state wouldn't enter into a compact, the state license holders, those investors, would then be punished because they were not in partnership with another recognized entity by the state. Once we started losing those investors and it didn't seem like the conversations were going anywhere, we decided, you know, we are sovereign. We do have the authority to do this on our own, so we're going to. So that's the culmination of the announcement you saw.
Jamie?
Yeah, so at the point in which you're trying to get a hold of get the state's attention to discuss a compact, would that mean necessarily you would be adopting similar regulations to the commercial program of the state, or do you still be doing it similar to what the discussion is now?
Yeah, so some of the provisions would be similar. You know, there are certain things under the state regulations that would not work for Bay Mills simply because our land size is so much smaller. So when you look at distance requirements or building requirements, you know, there are certain things that we would not be able to abide by. But for Bay Mills, you know, safety of the consumer is always number one. So when it comes to testing or regulation of the actual product we're selling, that would probably have been more on par with what the state is doing, because we want to create those standards that are uniform for the entire state. We want everyone to be safe. We want everyone to be protected and consume product that will not harm them. So yeah, some things we were contemplating being similar, other things we were not, and that is just due to, other constraints that we have due to our size.
Now, the next 12 months, it looks like, according to a news article, that you'll probably be able to have saleable cannabis within about 12 months, which means you'll have a cultivation system established, processing, and then also retail facilities as well. How do you see that playing out, and do you anticipate any interference from the state of Michigan or federal government?
At this point in time, we are not anticipating any interference. It's always been Bay Mills's position that we are sovereign and we can do this on our own. We're actually really open about what we're doing. So we communicate regularly with the state of Michigan and the U.S. Attorney's Office for the United States on what we're doing, just so that no one is surprised, no one is alarmed by what we're doing. And we're following a very strategic and planned out approach so that much of what we're doing on tribal land you can see in other cannabis industries throughout the United States. So we're not being entirely crazy. It's a very strategic approach in how we're doing it, and we're making sure everyone is informed as we move forward as well.
Good. So other tribes out west you mentioned that have previously entered into compacts with state governments, they're successfully operating systems right now. Would that be true?
Yeah, that is true. So the state of Washington, Oregon, and Nevada have all negotiated what we're calling marijuana compacts with their individual states. And what that does is it really hammers out the details of safety, like we talked about, testing, transportation, taxes, but it still allows the tribes to license and regulate their own operations on reservation. It's, the compact agreements are usually a mutual, handshake between two different sovereigns who say, hey, we're going to work on this together. We're going to make sure we're upholding the same standards and make sure that it's safe for everyone.
There's some concern that if you don't have a compact in place by the time you're ready to retail cannabis in 12 months, you may not be able to actually take cannabis off the reservation and onto traditional state governed lands because it wouldn't have been legally cultivated or legally sold. Are you concerned about that? And is that something that you're prepared to argue in court for?
Yeah, so when it comes to transportation, we're looking at right now securing transportation that would allow for, the product to stay in an enclosed, secure transporter so that it goes from one reservation to another. We do plan to engage the state of Michigan on what that transportation will look like throughout the state of Michigan. Will stops be allowed? Does it have to be one drive to another, one reservation spot to another reservation spot? But we're hoping that we're able to work that out in discussions with the state of Michigan. California actually has a model that would be really similar to this. So when California was legalizing marijuana, the tribes also out there tried to negotiate compacts with the state, and it was outright rejected for a variety of political reasons. California also has a lot more tribes than the state of Michigan does. And there are several tribes out there who are actually operating grow, processing, and retail operations right now that sell their product to other tribes on, other reservations. So we've been kind of turning to the state of California to look at how their model's playing out, what type of agreements they entered into. Was it at a local level? Were you talking to your counties? Were you talking to your state and working out all of the transportation issues?
Deb, did you want to join?
Join what?
Oh, I thought you'd take yourself off mute. You wanted to ask. I have a
No, I
question.
put the dogs outside. So
So you have several different properties, not only in the Upper Peninsula, but also in northern Michigan as well. Do you anticipate that you would cultivate on one property and then process or retail on a separate property simply because of land use restrictions? Would that be in your plan?
So the facility we've identified in our press release is actually large enough that we do intend to have a grow, process, a testing center, and a retail location all in one giant hub. We're actually looking at engaging in some partnerships with local universities who have cannabis programs and having them, assist us in the testing side of things. But so we do plan on having one giant facility that does all 3, 4, maybe even 5 different options for the cannabis market. And then when we look at our smaller retail stores, depending on the market, how much grow we're producing, that one giant grow operation and processing operation would supply the product to the other retail locations. But, you know, if we're successful and we needed 2 grow operations, we wouldn't rule that out either of building up another one at a different location.
What a great plan, actually, to be able to do that. It's amazing. What other obstacles do you see in your path, or what advantages do you see the Bay Mills Group having here in Michigan?
We've kind of gamed out a lot of the obstacles beforehand. You know, it was always about the compact. How would the state of Michigan be treating us entering into this cannabis market? And because we've been engaging in such open dialogue, we've really been trying to focus more on the advantages now. And one of those is the tax advantage. So if you have a product that is grown, produced, and has added value on reservation, you do not need to apply any taxes to it. So that's one of our greatest advantages entering the market, is we can have, you know, similar or even better product that is sold to consumers at a much lower price, because you don't have the 16% tax that the state of Michigan
Yes.
on the product.
Yes.
So
Heck
Would there be
yeah.
anything that
I am
prohibits,
into it.
would there be anything that prohibits the use of cannabis in the casinos that are also on tribal land?
yeah, we've been discussing that actually. So our casino used to allow cigarette smoking, but because of COVID, we've actually just recently switched to no smoking at all. So I'm not sure how those conversations will play out in the future, if we're going to continue to stay a non-smoking facility just because of COVID, or what that'll look like. We have been looking into different air processors in order to infiltrate, you know, the smell and the smoke out. Because if you've entered a casino, you know that they can be kind of smelly, you know, from cigarette smoke. So how we could best handle that for the individuals who do not smoke is something that we're looking into. One of the things we are also planning at our different retail locations is having a tasting and consumption lounge adjoining them. So if we did have something near the casino, it would look like a retail tasting consumption lounge that you can kind of walk just a short ways away, enjoy your product, you know, engage in it there, and then enter back onto the casino floor.
I can tell you,
That's so great.
that would be a unique feature that would draw a ton of people that would
Yes, I
normally not
love
want to
that.
visit your
I
casino.
love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, it's just like
That's
that
a
would be,
winner.
yeah, like getting on the magic bus.
Yeah. And you
Yeah.
know what? I feel like people are going to see that it's great. I remember I was in Grand Rapids for some meeting, and I was talking to someone who was like, I don't know if we want a dispensary right down from the church. And I'm like, I think that'd be great. Like
Yeah.
if there was a dispensary right on the way to my church, it'd be great. Like it would do good business. Everybody would be really opened up. It'd be a beautiful thing. You know, like people aren't seeing it's going to be this beautiful thing. Like as long as
Yeah.
let's all hang out and engage in this plant.
Let's
Yeah,
do it,
I'm so happy
Shelly.
about it. I'm so happy about it.
That's one of the things we've been working on as well. You know, especially being in a rural area, there's still a lot of social stigma associated with marijuana use. And one of the things we've been trying to convey, not only to our tribal membership, but the public at large, is this isn't, you know, your brother's basement type of retail store. Like this is a sophisticated facility that you can come buy and enjoy product and feel comfortable and safe being there. So that's one of the things we've really been trying to focus on when we talk to our membership and the public as well.
When it comes down to an authoritative source of natural plant medicine knowledge, most people think of Native Americans as people who value the plant and respect its essence. And I think that classes or even a university on tribal lands focused on cannabis studies would be extremely successful.
Yeah, that's you must be reading my mind, because we have a local tribal college, the Bay Mills Community College, and they're actually looking at integrating some type of classwork on that as well. And we actually have a farm right now that does all organic, natural growing in terms of meat production, as well as vegetables that are provided out to the community. And we would, you know, be looking at them as a resource in order to duplicate that for our cannabis products as well.
Yes.
Jamie, you had a question a moment ago?
Yeah, I'm just wondering what the individual rights look like. Do individuals grow in their own home under Michigan laws or adoption of something similar to the Michigan laws?
Yeah, so when we legalized marijuana on reservation, we did adopt the Michigan law with a couple tweaks because we didn't want that, like I said, those invisible boundary lines to create, this mix up of prosecution that might occur for marijuana. So right now on reservation, an individual can have the 12 plants in their home for each adult, like it is under the Michigan law. They're allowed to carry up to 2.5 ounces on their person and 10 ounces if they're at home. So that is all legal on reservation and mirrors the Michigan law as well.
If our viewers would like to support the Bay Mills Group in this effort, either through just encouragement or to follow your story, how could they best do that?
Visit our store when it opens up. That'll be the number one, I think, way we can be supported. We also really do appreciate anyone at, speaking up if you're talking to state representatives or even the general public, taking the opportunity to explain what sovereignty means, what that means for tribes, why we're engaging in this business, and what this type of economic diversification means for us. It's always great to have those conversations because a lot of individuals think of tribes and they think of casinos, and then they think that tribes are super rich and they have all this money. So, why are you now entering the cannabis industry? And that's actually not true because tribes do not have any way to tax their lands or tax their people. Casinos fund entire government operations. And at the end of the day, when you're in a rural area like the Upper Peninsula, that's not a lot of income, to really fund an entire government. So just having those conversations, visiting our store, supporting us, we appreciate all of it. And actually, so we just opened up a contest to help us name our new business. So if you guys want a contest, you can find the information on our Bay Mills News Facebook page. So we're taking names right now and we're hoping, we'll be able to make that announcement soon.
There'll be an influx of Rick-themed names coming into your. Won't be from me though.
No.
So I appreciate that. We'll look for your Facebook page. To set aside the cannabis issue for just a second, you recently won a big success in the issue of Line 5 in the court system in Michigan. Could you please explain to our viewers about that? Because we're extremely interested in this topic.
Yeah, so we haven't won the case yet, but we were granted the right to intervene before the Michigan Public Service Commission, which is really important because now we're recognized as a party that can engage in discovery and evidence and testimony on why Line 5 should be decommissioned and taken out of the Straits of Mackinac. Bay Mills has taken the position that Line 5 not only endangers the Straits, but it endangers our treaty rights throughout the Great Lakes. It endangers the Michigan public at large. It endangers our ecosystems and our wetlands. And together we are working with several other tribes for the ultimate goal of decommissioning Line 5 altogether. So we did intervene, and it's the first time a tribe has been granted intervention before the Michigan Public Service Commission. So we're really excited to be engaging them in that court process as well.
What's the best way for us to follow the story on that particular one? Also through your Facebook page? Is that the best way?
Yeah, we do regular announcements on our Bay Mills News Facebook page, but actually Michigan Waters has a different docket system that you can sign up for. So you can enter your email system and it'll give you updates regarding what's going on in the case, what filings have been made. Right now, we are actually engaging in discovery. So the first round of discovery has been sent to Enbridge, seeking documents on design plans and other studies that they have done in order to ensure the protection of the Straits of Mackinac. So.
Are there any other issues that are of particular significance to the Bay Mills Group that you'd like to talk about today?
Other than Line 5 and the cannabis, there's not much. We're just hanging in there with COVID right now. We're trying to do our best to support our communities and make sure that we can continue operating as a government. The UP's been hanging tight. I know there's a lot more cases everywhere else, but we're holding on and just trying to all take care of one another at this time so we can make it through. So
cannabis is #1. We're #1 in your book. That's great. Listen,
yeah, we're really excited.
What a wonderful conversation we've had today. I hope you'll agree to come back to Jazz Cabbage Cafe in the future if we have any additional developments.
Yeah, definitely. And I think you'll see some more announcements coming from us in the future detailing our plans. So please look forward to those, and hopefully we can open sooner rather than later.
Whitney, thank you again for joining us and representing the Bay Mills community.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day, everyone.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Hey, I have to hop off.
That was
So
great.
y'all have fun. I have to go
Thanks,
do
Ellen.
stuff.
Bye.
2 really good
Always.
interviews today, though. I thought, wow, 2
Yeah,
really
this
solid.
really good.
I
both of
learned
them.
so much. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I'll see y'all soon.
Thanks,
Bye.
Shelley.
Bye.
Thanks, Shelley. Bye.
So this is the time we sort of talked about having a conversation regarding the Attorney General interview that went down on Friday with the Michigan Democratic Party's Cannabis Caucus. Jamie, do you want to try and set that up a little bit?
Do that.
Yeah, well, we were able to have the Attorney General and a panel of her staff be on board for this discussion, and we asked a variety of things. Her participation in the lawsuit, Sinclair versus the Board of Pharmacy, that would direct the Board of Pharmacy to remove cannabis from the controlled substances list. We talked to her about her participation in helping us to get expungement. Certainly, she wrote that great letter about Michael Thompson, and there's a little bit of action that's taken place there. We talked about getting the names of expanded list of people who have been affected by cannabis convictions, not just the ones that are solely in jail, which is a small list, just for cannabis. To expand, I'm getting nailed by a bee. To expand out. We talked about a lot of things that have been a concern, and we got a lot to work with. The Attorney General and the panel answered a lot of things we asked. It was this nice exchange. Rick facilitated it. It was organized by Zara, introduced by Zara, and then Rick facilitated it perfectly for the circumstances. We, as an advocacy group in the Democratic Party, really had a nice exchange with her and came out with some really good information, and kept our relationship with the Attorney General good. And we'll try to continue to work with her as much as we can.
Now, it was not just the Attorney General. She also had 4 members of her staff with her as well. So she had a legislative specialist, she had an administrative specialist, a bunch of folks there. So it was a big commitment from her office to meet with us. And it was an hour and a half's worth of time, too. So that's a lot to ask for 5 people at that level to give us. Debra, you saw the interview, didn't you?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Tell us from your observer status, what was your impression of that?
This is what drew me to Dana in the first place, is that she's very approachable. I believe what she says. I'm hoping this time the things that were discussed with her, particularly, criminal justice reform and things of that nature, people being held against their will in crazy situations, expungements. I mean, things like this, that we counted on her to take care of it. She sounds like she's on our side. She's on our side. She's on our side. Are these issues going to move forward, Rick?
Well, we asked for several things last time, and she's delivered on everything that we asked for. We asked for her to consider the Michael Thompson case. She did. We asked for her to give us a list of people still incarcerated. She did. As a result of this meeting, I mentioned that we need to take a look at drug testing people for cannabis in state job positions, and they bantered back and forth about, well, maybe it's a policy, maybe it's a law, I don't really know. And they swore that they would look into it. And I believe that they probably already have,
But looking into things is not action. I mean, you know what I'm saying?
But she did produce 2 action items that we asked for.
Okay.
She did.
Yeah, that's true. But there's a lot of things that are sitting there, and time will tell if we get to some of the more of the important things. We certainly are very happy with the proactive, stance that she's taken on a couple of things so far. Yep. We talked about her participation in the Board of Pharmacy Sinclair case, and during that time, she said that she supported unscheduling, or certainly taking it off Schedule 1. And there has been a legislative effort going on, and said she would support that in the legislature. So that was a positive taken from that. it's a weird issue. I mean, we would like it if she would stop contesting it, but we did get that out of it, and maybe that approach will be good. So there's a lot of positives that we have to work with that came out of this, even though maybe not everything did as exactly as we might like to see it as taking place. So, but we'll continue to get what we can out of these conversations. It's been working well.
Yeah, what I'm saying is she's willing to listen. That's what I like about her. She does listen, and she seems to understand, and she always sounds like she's on our side. So we'll see.
I'm interested. As I reviewed that recording, she actually supported, if I'm not mistaken, descheduling. I mean, completely removing it from the schedule.
She said that. She said that. No, she said that, and then she followed up with certainly taking it off of Schedule 1. Okay. I do support descheduling, certainly. So I like the first part of it, but she did qualify it shortly thereafter, just to be fair.
And she did mention that her obligation in these cases is to represent the Board of Pharmacy in the state of Michigan that's being sued here. We know that there's an option available for her to just decline to participate in this, but that would really be very unusual. So she did suggest, however, that the way for us to properly get descheduling or rescheduling is to go through the legislature. And Jamie, you have some information on a bill that might potentially accomplish that?
Well, I mean, we've been talking to Yusuf Rabi since last session about trying to do something, and it hasn't been easy. I think that the willingness and the motivation has been there from him and his office and some others, but it's more complex than you think it might need to be as far as trying to get it done properly from the perspective of the Legislative Services Bureau and other people who see a gap in penalties and consequences for certain cannabis behaviors if it's no longer connected to the criminal code by the Controlled Substances Act. So try to cover that ground while simultaneously removing it is what's been the issue. So we'll see what we have to work with, but I am told that a working draft is on its way, and I'm looking forward to starting to see what we have to discuss as far as that goes. And that's as farthest as we've been taking it. It's, it is pretty cool, and hopefully one of these actions will work.
Well, that's part of the reason why Dana Nessel says the legislative pathway is the right way to do descheduling, because if you just decline to prosecute, to defend that case, and we just snap our fingers and take cannabis off the schedule, I'm good with that. I am. But there are so many additional consequences to that the system really wants to do it in a way that they're used to, which means one bill that changes a bunch of things instead of having one fell swoop. It's a very thought out process. I don't trust this legislature to follow through with any of the things that we think are appropriate, and that's what drives me crazy about that answer.
Yeah, that's been the frustrating catch-22 that the Legislative Bureau of Services created. We agree that it's irrational that it sits there on the list, given all the contradictions and just inappropriate definitions and descriptions of cannabis, and yet it's perceived that it must be connected to these consequences for behaviors, and if it's not, then something will happen, and that really hasn't been described other than the fact that some crimes aren't covered. But it is the legislature's job to fill in those gaps when necessary. So I don't mind at all just bumping it and then figuring out what's really an issue that needs to be addressed legislatively, and let everybody participate in that discussion on how to address it. But it might be taken care of in a way that isn't ideal, but that is very functional and covers that ground for everybody. And sometimes that's the best we get out of a situation, and we can try to make it better thereafter.
Cannabis on Schedule 1 is the biggest lie perpetrated by the United States government. I mean, everybody that knows cannabis knows that that's factually incorrect. Physicians know it's factually incorrect. Scientists know it's factually incorrect. And every day that it remains on the list of controlled substances as Schedule 1 or Schedule anything, it destroys people's faith in our governmental system. So if you want people to respect laws, you want people to do things that are right, how about start making logical decisions about things, including removing cannabis from Schedule 1?
There you go.
We got a lot of work to work with. There was some discussion of possibly addressing the acts that were passed by the people in 2008, 2018, and trying to open them up to try to align certain things, align the laws to make it easier for somebody. So, that in and of itself is a concern. I don't necessarily believe the Attorney General's office is doing anything to hurt us, but I don't feel comfortable at all with not having the time to be able to weigh in on it with the appropriate, stakeholders, and not looking to actually fix while it's open, looking to actually address a lot of the issues, particularly with the MMA, with its not properly being implemented and dysfunctional interpretations of many things. If it's going to be open, that type of an address, might be something that could be looked at, but just the risk of leaving it exposed. I mean, it does not wash in this session for sure. I don't like even the next session, but it would be the next conversation of how that might go down and who may be involved in those discussions and what we're trying to work on and that type of thing. As it is right now, that didn't work with me very well. These are things that we can discuss as we, keep the discussion ongoing.
The current composition of the legislature in the state of Michigan, which is a Republican-controlled Senate and a Republican-controlled House, does not accurately reflect the demographic of the state of Michigan. It actually reflects the gerrymandered district situation that Republicans created over a period of time, which is going to be rectified by citizen commission before too long. There are no pressing issues that are so drastic that they need immediate resolution. And I don't think there are any issues that need resolution, to be honest with you. I think all of us on this call know, and Deb knows this for sure, we have a supremacy clause. Anytime you have a voter-directed initiative, it is supreme to all other laws. That means the MRTMA, the adult use legalization law, is supreme to the MMFLA, the business law created by the legislature. It's supreme to ordinance law. It's supreme to other things too. We don't need an alignment bill, right? We already know what's supreme.
We know it. That's right.
So
that's correct.
So alignment bills are something that sound very much to me like a tool of those people who manipulate legislatures, right?
It's a diversion.
Yeah. Well, they want to get what they want. And Jamie very accurately describes how bad it can be to open up the acts to these kind of manipulations.
Yeah.
It could be a lame duck where the public can't even weigh in on the stuff.
In the middle of the night. Imagine that,
That's how they do it.
And the Democrats have gone along with this type of stuff before. So there's some education that we might have to be participating in to help. Stop this.
They get talked into it and then you can't talk them out. I've argued this with some of the Democratic reps and they'd be like, well, what do you mean? And they get fed some information and I don't even know where the sources are sometimes.
Lobbyists. That's where all their information comes from.
Crazy. And they think they're doing the right thing and you just can't even convince them that they're not.
Well, and once they've already cast a vote or once they've already made a public statement, for them to reverse that or to change is drastic for those people. So if you don't get there in the time when they're trying to form an opinion about a particular subject, you might be too late to influence them at all. It's kind of a shitty system, to be honest with you.
It's a real shitty system.
Not as shitty as Jim Salame's, colonoscopy situation earlier today, but theoretically shitty, not actually shitty.
Yeah, dude. He's lying. He's not getting no damn colonoscopy. Don't drive yourself to the colon. Somebody's got to go with you.
He drove his friend. His friend is
okay, because I was gonna say, and they don't happen that fast either.
No polyps. That was a pretty quick diagnosis there.
Yeah, that was pretty quick, man. They must have slapped him when he walked through the door, run the hose up there. Yep.
Scope and poke. That's what they did. I guess actually be poke and scope. According to the actual.
I don't know. I only had one once, Rick. I'm not, a constant flyer, like a frequent flyer like you and Jamie.
Well, Jamie, not me, but I think logically we can assume poke comes before scope, actually.
I would think so, yeah.
Yeah.
It could just be, never mind.
My mind wanders as to what you were going to say. But anyway, we've had a couple of really great conversations today. Whitney from the Bay Mills.
This is not one of them, though.
No. Whitney from Bay Mills. That was awesome.
She's really cool. She's real cool. I like her.
Sovereignty.
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 It'll take me a minute.
It's
It'll
like
take
Salame
me a
tea.
bit. Got to unlearn a bad habit. Oh no, that sucks.
It was a good lesson for some people.
Yeah, for
Right.
you especially, 'cause you came out
Oh,
on the
yeah.
top. So it was a.
And I should have been the person who intervened instead of Shelley early on to
Exactly.
save a lot of it.
See?
Yeah. You've been listening to me say it that way for a long time without saying dick. All right, nice. Way to
Awesome.
hang dry on the recording.
That's a
little
real
chuckle.
friend, Rick. That's
Yeah.
a real friend.
Oh,
Appreciate it.
dagger out of my back. Oh.
I'll just leave you out there so everybody can laugh.
It's okay. I laugh at me all the time. It's pretty fun to do. So the important thing though is that we're featuring here on Jazz Cabbage Cafe some of the real newsmakers, some of the things that aren't even really being talked about in mainstream media. We're getting exposed.
For sure. Yeah. We're
I
good
haven't
at
heard
that.
I haven't heard anybody talk about Victoria's story about the individual counties being able to expunge records in California. How amazing would that be here?
That is, I never even considered a concept like that.
When we
I'm
talk
sure
to her,
she's going to suggest this to those candidates when we have our interview on Thursday. I'm really looking forward to that, and her inclusion, is going to help things out a little bit.
when we talked to her previously, she said that it was her understanding that if, for example, if Wayne County were to do those expungements, that would affect the statewide database, and that those records would have to be removed not only from lien but also from the statewide criminality.
That would be cool.
There's a
That
couple
would
of
be cool.
unanswered questions, but I'm really interested in exploring that option.
Yeah.
Any way we can get around our current state roadblocks to accomplish change that benefits people, I'm interested in that. And that seems like a system that's already existing that could be put into play and work. Similar to the system Whitney described in some of the western states where the state government and the Native Americans actually work together to have a good system that our government just didn't seem to be interested in doing, which is bizarre. I mean, we thought Gretchen Whitmer would be a little bit more open-minded than that. And it seems like for a year and a half, she's been the one sitting in the governor's chair while that non-negotiation was happening. So
I'll try to find the details for the Cannabis Caucus Zoom broadcast on Thursday. What time it is.
Isn't it from 6 to 7:30, if I'm not mistaken?
Sounds right.
I read it too, but I don't remember. I glanced at it and then thought, oh, I'll read it later.
Yeah. Pronunciation and memory, my two strong suits. Yeah. But really, I know we just briefly touched on the Attorney General's conversation on Friday. That really was pretty revolutionary, though. She was extremely forthcoming. She was very.
That's the type of person she is, don't you think?
I do.
That's yeah.
That non-politician, that honesty, that not worn down by the system yet, that freshness. That's really attractive.
Yeah, it is, and she's so bright. So she's so smart, and you just it kind of draws you in. She's very charismatic.
The other thing is she was proven to be able to take an issue all the way to the big house previously because she had a United States Supreme Court victory in the LGBT case. So, I mean, wow, you're backing a proven winner, somebody that knows how to get it done. That's good.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's what I like about her. That's what I always liked about her.
Yeah.
5:30 to 7.
5:30 to 7?
Wow. It's happy hour.
Conversation. Go on, sorry.
Yeah, those of us on the executive committee probably tuning in about 5-ish. So it's another 2 hours.
And planting green trees. And there's going to be a special planting green trees tonight.
Well, right? I think it's just a recording, and then they're going to edit it and then release it later on.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So, and that'll be focused on the Attorney General and the meeting that we had on Friday also, too. The conversation surrounding Michael Thompson and his release is actually quite dramatic. M Live did a little bit of a breakdown of the potential timeline for his release if everything goes according to Hoyle. September 11th, the parole board's going to have a meeting in which they will vote. Once they vote on something, then there's an appeals period, which is anywhere up to 90 days, at least 30 days, but potentially as long as 90 days, so that any of the victims or any of the county prosecutor or any other interested party could make a complaint or an issue with the verdict that was given. After that period has expired, our understanding is that's the time at which the governor could commute the sentence, no matter what the parole board decided.
So you're talking mid-October sometime.
Well, up to 90 days after
Yeah,
September 11th.
but I
so
mean
that
the
could be-
earliest.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, October, November, December, anytime
First
within
of the year.
Yep.
Mm.
And according to Dana Nussel, although she didn't want to say anything more, she said that the governor was very interested in this case.
Yeah.
To my layman's interpretation, that means probably once the ability is available to her, she would commute the sentence.
I agree. You know, sometimes you just have to make them aware of what's going on. And you know, he's not the only one. That's the biggest point. The biggest point I want to make to people is he is definitely not the only one.
We have some people on the Michigan Democratic Party Cannabis Caucus who are super focused on emancipating prisoners currently incarcerated for crimes related to cannabis issues, not necessarily just for cannabis crimes, and asking the Attorney General's office for an expanded list of people that meet that criteria was an important step. Mike McCurdy, who's our caucus chair, has been in contact with the Last Prisoner Project, and they've given him some language that they've used when approaching state prosecuting offices in the past, and I think that's a successful pathway for us. Trying to get an expanded list.
I agree.
Yeah, makes sense.
You know, we talk about what we've done for Michael Thompson here, and that's great, but we're only part of an entire movement that's trying to get this guy freed. We've seen sports figures, motion picture stars, and political figures all using the hashtag Free Michael Thompson. So it's been larger than just the movement that we're doing here in Michigan. But by the same token, when we look at the cause and effect that was created by the Cannabis Caucus's conversation with her initially, and then the follow through that's happened since then, it's undeniable that the work we've done has had a big difference in this case.
No, there's no question about it. And it would ideally represent the beginning of looking at many who are similarly affected and start moving those people out and justifying reducing those sentences or commuting those sentences too.
Oftentimes it takes one successful example and then the rest will be able to are much easier afterwards. But if the system doesn't allow one, then there's no reason for us to pursue 10, right? So, and the parole board, as I've been told in the past, the parole board definitely is not a liberal group. They're not necessarily appointed by the people. They're assigned by internal bureaucrats. They kind of have a hard-ass attitude about things. They believe people are in jail for good reasons and should stay there unless there's real exceptional reasons to let them out. So I don't necessarily expect them to give us a rose petal golden pathway leading Michael out the door. I just want them to step aside and let the system work. I just want them to not make a value judgment and just let this go. Let this be. Let this guy out. Never met him. Probably never will. Doesn't matter. He doesn't deserve to be in there.
I mean, Dana was pretty emphatic about how she found the sentence to be grossly in line with the with the charges or with the conviction.
Mm-hmm.
And
our video of that interview was reviewed by MLive's Gus Burns, who wrote a very important article, which has been picked up by a lot of different news outlets across the United States. And that article is where I took that brief timeline that I just talked about for Michael Thompson's release. Gus evaluated that video section very, very carefully and got some great quotes from the Attorney General listed out there. Inspirational. And if she feels that strongly about this case, I'm sure she'll feel equally strongly about some other cases we're going to present to her as well.
Right.
Yeah. So, and that's really what advocacy is about. Sometimes we do big picture things, and sometimes we focus on individual people. And sometimes those two are the same. Freeing Michael Thompson is more than just emancipating a single person. It's proving the system was wrong and that there's an opportunity for people who were wronged to get right.
So we can
Oh, wow.
look at wrapping up at any time unless you want to add some or.
Deb, what do you got? You have anything you want to toss on there? Any special
No,
happenings in the world of
yeah,
Debra?
well, yeah, I'm heading up to Traverse City Thursday morning.
Okay.
Yeah, my first adventure out. We'll see. I might be up there 4 days and eat nothing. I don't know. We'll see. I'm going to visit a friend who's got a hemp farm up there, though, so
Very
that
cool.
should be fun.
Very nice.
Jamie and I visited a hemp farm last year. Boy, was that a great time.
Yeah.
It's nice.
So I'll check in
This
with
looks
them.
so
and
good. Yeah.
yeah, basically that's it. Normally we do pond jam. That's why we're up there, and no pond jam this year. So we'll
Yep.
see.
A lot of events have been canceled or postponed because of the COVID.
Yeah.
Jamie, what's on your schedule for the rest of the week, other the big Thursday event?
After that, there'll be the regular broadcast of Planet Green Trees by Green Trees TV, Facebook, and YouTube.
Tomorrow, I will be broadcasting 420 Post at 1 p.m. Also at 1 p.m. on Grow Green MI's The Secret Garden, you will see the cannabis news in a pre-recorded segment. So my face will be on two different channels simultaneously. And then, of course, I'll be recording a segment of Ryan Basor's new show, the Frozen Rope podcast. So that'll be fun. Talking
Smoking
about
rope.
smoking ropes, rather.
Rope.
Yep, smoking rope. So that's focused on the Dana Nessel interview that we just did. And then afterwards, I'll be featured on the Lincoln podcast, which Jason Durham has been doing that out of his place in Oscoda and Tawas. He's coming down to Flint to interview. Then we get that big thing going on Thursday. So there's just a lot happening simultaneously. Advocacy's out there for people that want to get involved. There's lots of ways you can. You don't have to sit on your hands and wait.
Good reason to pitch in a little bit too if you've been thinking about it.
I'm hearing some music. What's that about?
It's just a car going by.
Jimmy's
Oh,
being
I thought
serenaded by a
Jamie was
lover.
rocking out. Yeah.
Yes. Someone that wants to give Jamie a colonoscopy. What? Oh. The theme of the show. Well, listen, we should probably wrap it up then.
Good stuff again, yeah.
What a
Good
great,
job.
what a great Jazz Cabbage Cafe today. Thanks to Jim. Thanks to Shelly for joining us as well. Thanks to Whitney and also to Victoria for being wonderful guests on Jazz Cabbage. It's September 1st, 2020, and that's the show.
Yay.
Thanks a lot, Jazz Cabbage. Thanks, man.
Have a good day.